Hello and welcome to Citizens Forum. This is being filmed on Tuesday, May the 5th in the Memorial Arena in Victoria, BC. I'd like to start by thanking the Shaw staff and our volunteer crew that makes all of this happen. The first part of Citizens Forum is always the Walter and Jack show. So Walter, you and I went to the sewage thing is moving ahead in Victoria big time. It seems like major decisions are going to be made by the end of June. I've contacted the CRD as best I could to try to find out what the timelines are. I haven't heard yet, but we're gonna talk a little bit about sewage treatment later on in the show towards the 30 or 40 minute mark, and we'll have 7 or 8 minutes on sewage treatment. Anything? You were there?
Well, some of the impressions I had from being there, very grave concerns about the process. It looks great, works bad. So it looks good. You think, here they are, and it's all these public relations people flourishing around. But when it came right down to it, really didn't get much information from the public, as far as I was concerned. So there's a process problem.
So, sewage treatment, I think it's important. I think, it's happening maybe fast. We don't know yet. But Saanich, this is this month's Focus magazine. And I just want to read one sentence about the spyware. I don't even know what word to use. Scandal, disaster, disgrace in Saanich. And this is a quote from Focus magazine. They have a whistleblower. And the whistleblower was at a meeting at which supposedly the following statement was made. And the whistleblower is saying, he said, they are nervous about the new mayor. We're installing it, meaning the spyware, on the director's computers as well to make it look like it's not targeted. So, here it is in black and white, Focus magazine this month on page 12. It's an amazing statement. It's amazing because nothing seems to be happening. I don't understand how this can go on. Well, I do understand, but how can it go on? How can it go on?
Well, who's in charge here, Jack? Like in municipal
right.
government. We don't know who the they are yet, then that's a huge problem. There's a lot of rumors swirling around, but nobody's taking responsibility, and it doesn't seem like the council's going after to try to find out who made these decisions. But, the privacy commissioner said that laws were broken. So it's not just a gray area of maybe they could have done better or something. Her interpretation was laws were broken. So where's it going to go from here? We deserve a lot better than what we're getting. The public deserves one heck of a lot more accountability than what Saanich Council's offering up.
Well, where should that accountability come from? Let's assume Saanich Council won't do it. Whose job is it to... if a law has been broken that is enforceable in some way, then doesn't somebody have to, or have we gotten to the point now where the country is becoming so corrupt that with impunity laws can be broken?
I was trying to find out about that, and I never got very far. I phoned some authorities and said, well, how does it work? I just got a runaround. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to work on that this week. I'm going to find out exactly how. I'm a resident of Saanich. Come to my attention that somebody has broken the law. It doesn't matter who or what's been done, and I would like to find out how I would go about bringing that to the attention of the authorities.
That's a very good...
And just to see what they have to say.
Stay tuned. So today is Tuesday, May the 5th. I got an email from the NDP, which I'm a member of. In amongst many asking for money, I got one that said, Bill C-51 is going to be passed tomorrow. That's May the 6th. And I don't know if you've noticed, but there's been absolutely zero in the media about Bill C-51 for the last 2 or 3 weeks. Here it is, one of the most important things maybe in Canadian history. It seems like Harper and the people who run him are starting a secret police force that will operate on behalf of corporate Canada in order to make sure that we, the people who may want to stop their poisonous pipelines, their poisoning of our food, their destruction of our country, that they will now have a weapon to use against us. So that's happening, and there's been nothing in the media. There's been all kinds of, there's been inquiries. There hasn't been inquiries. There's been a parliamentary committee. And there's been massive people interested in this issue. But the media won't cover it. Why won't the media cover it? Because the media is owned by the same corporations that intend to benefit from Bill C-51. They are the ones who want it passed. It's got nothing to do with Stephen Harper. Stephen Harper is their puppet. And from what I heard, this is going to be passed. When you see this, the bill will already have been passed. It's going to happen Wednesday, May the 6th.
It's a travesty, Jack. You know, it's sliding further down the hole, away from fundamental values that Canadians have. We can go on and on about it, but you know, when you think they have all this surveillance, you know, even the spyware that was put on Mayor Atwell's computer, they're spying. What the heck are they doing with the information? We have a case here for them. We have somebody who's broken the law in Sandage. You know what I mean? You don't have to look any further. What do you do now? It just seems like they want to spy on us, but what they do with that information doesn't seem to have anything to do with bringing about justice or anything of that nature. They're going to keep those terrorists away, Jack.
Yeah, while if anybody is interested, we've started a little sort of online news service or newspaper or something. And it's called thebridgenewsservice.com. www.thebridgenewsservice.com. And if anybody is interested, my email address appears at the bottom of the screen sometimes. If you want to send me an email, and we can put you on a list so you'll get the news stories that are put out by the Bridge News Service. And then if you want, you can pass them along to anybody in your list who you think might be interested. And that way we can sort of start a grassroots something. So again, thebridgenewsservice.com, send me an email, and away we go.
I think also, Jack, if anyone's interested in writing an opinion piece or an article on a topic, I think the Bridge would welcome that, and you know, it'd be nice to get people more involved with doing their own research and trying to, you know, get an opinion out.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And also, if anybody is interested in trying to find ways we can get access into any of the international media, like some of the stories we write are national, international, and it's very difficult to find a way to get a story into any of the international media, but they might be interested in something different from Canada. So if anybody's interested in finding those things, that'd be great. Election in Alberta today, Tuesday, May the 5th. The media seems to be predicting a possible NDP victory. And I'm saying that if there is an NDP victory, I predict that there will be absolutely no change in Alberta. Alberta is in trouble. Alberta is like, you know, the tar sands are a worldwide issue. Everybody's against the tar sands. And 20 years ago, 1991, 24 years ago, everybody was against clear-cut logging in British Columbia. It was a worldwide issue, just like the tar sands are now. And what happened was the media brought in an NDP government, the government of Mike Harcourt, and they brought in 100 new parks, in quotation marks, and the best logging practices in the world, and basically the issue died. They broke the back of the environmental movement. But on the ground, nothing changed. The same massively destructive, clear-cut logging continued as if nothing had changed, and in fact, nothing had changed. So now, fast forward to the NDP in Alberta, we'll see. I mean, I know the media destroyed the former premier, Alison Redford. They destroyed her over an apartment she was building for $100,000 or a few $100,000 and some plane rides that were free. I mean, the Alberta government has poisoned half the province of Alberta and given away all the money. And there hasn't ever been a word of criticism in the media about any of that. But suddenly they get rid of the premier, and suddenly we're ready for an NDP victory. Let's see what happens.
Well, they scrambled to have that election because the future doesn't look too bright for Alberta the next few years because oil prices may not rebound as quickly as they'd like. The thing is, Jack, remember we thought, when was the last time you heard of an NDP provincial government was, projected to win? Was right here in BC a couple of years ago. Yep. And we saw how wildly distorted the PR industry had how they distorted that picture and really faked the election, made people believing that the NDP were going to win and they didn't have a prayer from the start. So I don't trust anything. Also in Alberta, this always makes me wonder. Like you have these conservative, people in government that are supposed to be so good at managing the economy and managing business and all that. Alberta was in debt during the boom. Alberta was struggling when it was $110 a barrel. They weren't making ends meet then. So it's just astonishing that these guys ever had stayed in that long. I think that's the number one thing, the dissatisfaction amongst Albertans, is that they just know just how bad these people are at it. And they might be grasping at straws to get the NDP in, but I can't blame them. They need a change there.
Well, let's see if there really is a change.
Yeah.
This was in the Vancouver Sun Thursday, April 30th, so like a week ago. Vaccination rate too low. The media is really promoting getting to the point of mandatory vaccination. That, I would say, that's where the media seems to be going. And a lot of the politicians as well. It's happening in Australia. They're moving very rapidly. And I think what the corporations want is they just want the right to come in and be able to stick a needle full of whatever poison they want into everybody who they want to, because they kind of want to take that away from us. You think you can resist? You can't resist. We're gonna. So GlaxoSmithKline is a major pharmaceutical company and I believe a major producer of vaccines as well. Somebody sent me this today. In 2012, the London Guardian would report that the pharmaceutical group GlaxoSmithKline had been fined $3 billion in 2012 after admitting bribing doctors and encouraging the prescription of unsuitable antidepressants to children. So these are the people who make the vaccines, and these are the people who are pushing, because it's not the media is owned by the same people, it's corporate, and the politicians. So that's the kind of, I'll just read it one more time. Fined $3 billion after admitting to bribing doctors and encouraging the prescription of unsuitable antidepressants to children. And there's more, but.
Those are psychoactive drugs. Those are very serious behavioral type drugs that nobody should take, as far as I'm concerned, but it was at one time being designed for adults. young children's brains are so much different than adults, and the impact, the long-term damage that can occur from taking those sort of drugs is unknown. So I know that's the companies that are pushing for full-on
And a lot of
vaccination.
people believe it. A lot of people, and you're almost afraid, because they make it. Give us some honest truth. Health Canada betrays us all the time, but they don't care about the truth. Health Canada is controlled by Stephen Harper right now, and he is controlled by corporate Canada. They want these these vaccinations in. And maybe I'm wrong, but as far as I'm concerned, that's what it's all about. It's all about money. They don't care about your health. The media does not care about your health. When they do these headlines where vaccination rates are too low, as if they care, I don't think there's any proof that vaccines work. I mean, I've seen in 30 years ago in a friend's medical textbook who was studying to become a doctor, clear proof that they have absolutely no impact whatsoever. But we never hear that story.
Yeah, Health Canada, this is where they're supposed to step in, Jack, and do research for us.
Yeah.
Is it public clamoring for the Health Canada to do less research? I mean, it's so painfully obvious. They are just a wing of the public relations department of these large corporations. They're just treated like a sector of the PR of the company, and they just spout the line whatever the company wants. It's really ridiculous. We can't get independent research because the companies won't do it, and their own governments refuse to do it.
And this isn't a knock from either of us, I don't think, against the people who work for Health Canada. But they know that if they don't do what they're told, they're going to lose their jobs. So who wants to do that in today's world? Mm-hmm. And when they do lose their jobs, nobody's going to care because the media won't report it, and they'll be on the street with their family.
Exactly.
Price of gas, I noticed, went up to $1.24 a liter.
Wow. Why is that, Jack?
Well, that's the point. Why are we paying virtually the highest price ever when the price of gas is the lowest it's been in forever? So how does that happen? I mean, and not a word, again, nothing in the media, and certainly nothing from our politicians saying what the hell's going on. Somebody's making, imagine the money that somebody is making out of this.
Think of it. Like, let the price of oil go through the boards. I mean, if they're still charging the same amount for it, like they're going to make enormous profits this year. And Jack, I found out that oil companies get $14 billion a year of subsidies from the federal government in Canada. Even when they're making these record profits, they still get their $14 billion. And you think of what we could do with $14 billion for housing, for instance, for affordable housing. No, we got to dump it into the pockets of those guys.
It's like you've put your finger on the massive corruption that exists in our country, because that's exactly that's it.
Well, Harper's an oil man, and so those decisions are all being made at levels that we'll never have access to.
And I just want to mention, as it ends, the massive, I won't call it a failure, but the betrayal of us by the private sector and the housing industry. They have completely failed to provide reasonably priced, good housing for the people of our country. And there's no criticism of them for it. I mean, what a failure. The public sector has got to step in and rescue us from this disaster. But we're out of time. Thank you, Walter.
Always a pleasure, Jack.
Thank you for watching this segment of Citizens Forum. Welcome to the second segment of Citizens Forum, being filmed on Tuesday, May the 5th. Our guest in this segment is Mehdi Najari. And Mehdi, welcome, Mehdi.
Thank you.
And we're going to be talking about the so-called radicalization of young people into, I guess, a fundamentalist ideology. And we're going to talk about who's doing it.
Yes, Jack, we are hearing a narrative in the media that the Muslim youths are being, and the converts are being radicalized by forces that we don't know where they are. And I felt all the time it doesn't make sense. I don't think you can radicalize a person online only, unless there are other factors involved. Right now we have in British Columbia court, we have the case of Amanda Crowdy and John Natal, that the so-called the Canada Day bombers in 2013, and July 2nd, they were arrested by RCMP and integrated National Security Enforcement Team. They were accused of planning a bombing on the July 1st in the legislature lawns, which supposedly was going to kill many people. And they were charged by offenses knowingly facilitating a terrorist activity and possession of an explosive substance. But RCMP at the same time, they said that RCMP claimed that they were inspired by Al-Qaeda ideology, and said there was no evidence to indicate that the two had support or were acting at the direction of a terrorist group.
They said that?
They said that. That was plastered in the media on July 2nd.
That's not true.
2nd and 3rd. But what we came out to understand what's really happened, the whole thing was set up by RCMP and CSIS. They approached these two, let's say who they are. Amanda Crowdy was about 29, 30 years old. John Natal was about 39 years old. Both of them were on methadone program. They were addicts, and they were trying to get rid of their addiction. They were on social assistance, welfare. So they were living in this basement in Surrey. They really didn't have any money, they were in really trouble. Amanda Crowdy was saying that she was vomiting, sometimes 15, 16 times a day, and they were on this methadone and other pills. Amanda was. So they were in really bad shape. At the same time, let me quote one of his friend, Darrell Nelson, which was a close friend of John Natal. He said, about 5 or 6 months ago, this is on July, he's saying, July 2013, he was kicked out of mosque. Around the same time, met Muslim brothers, start working in a furniture store, belonged to one of these Muslim brothers, delivering packages to business suit kind of guys. Personally, he quote, personally, I think he was hanging out with wrong people and they screwed with his head a little bit. He was always a few screws loose from drug abuse and everything else. He went through so he was very easily swayed. So he was an impressionable man, a 39-year-old with the mentality of 16-year-old, And Amanda was again very impressionable young woman, wanted to be belonged to.
Of course, everybody does, and that's what the RCMP offered them.
And here is the two, and the Natal was converted to Islam about a year before, I think, and they were kicked out of the mosque because they were not. The people didn't like what they were saying. So unfortunately for the mosque, kicking people out instead of helping them, and RCMP come to their lives and change them. They suddenly become secretive. One of another friend said, Ashley Volapati told CBC News, the couple started exhibiting odd behavior about 6 months ago, becoming distant, declining to socialize, and selling off Natal guitars. Natal was a musician, and he loved his guitars, and he suddenly sold everything. So it was really changed when the Muslim brother which were cops, got into contacting them. And then we see in the court, you know, it's amazing things is happening. For example, in the court, they ask, in one of the tapes that RCMP has, the Natal is saying that we are a student and the RCMP is the cop, the undercover cop is the master. The RCMP playing the role of a jihadi businessman, you know,
Yes.
from the area. So they set up everything. If I have time, I just want to quote one, Ian Mulgrove of Vancouver Sun, reporting very well actually on this issue, calling the whole thing a tragicomic drama. And he said in one paragraph, everything was orchestrated and controlled by RCMP and local agency, who even staged a phony meth lab incident in the couple neighborhood, complete with hazmat response team, in order to go and put some wiring in their apartment.
So this is being said by the Vancouver Sun reporter?
The reporter from the court. This is from April 22nd of this year. And
The problem is a lot of people believe kind of the official story.
And the RCMP guy has been on the stand for more than about 2 months now, since February. And he is he's very evasive. He's not answering the question right.
Yeah.
And he's trying to establish that they had this plan, while when they ask Natal, whose plan was this, you know, in the tapes that they have. And he's saying, it was all of us, we all chip in, you know.
Yeah.
So, and they put lots of pressure on them, you know. These people didn't have any money. But what the RCMP does, the RCMP go buy suit for him, taking them on the trips, buy them grocery and cigarette, taking them to Whistler, to Kelowna, to Victoria. What do you expect? Two people that were living in this basement, having no friend, not much friendship, and they were poor, dirt poor, didn't have money to take a bus. And now RCMP is coming and giving them lots of money. And now they created the scene, and they call this terror.
Yeah.
And they pat each other on the back. Oh, we caught them.
Yeah.
We saved the people.
Yeah.
And you know, the real message is that the Muslims are coming,
Yeah.
and they are here,
Yeah.
and not only their Muslim kids are dangerous, that endangering our society, but also the white kids that they can convert
Yeah.
and make them enemy of the state.
And folks, that's where we're at right now. The RCMP, acting, I guess, on the directions of Stephen Harper and his government, are creating false terror in our backyard and using it to terrify us and change everything.
So this was one case.
This is one. Now we've got only 10 minutes to do 3.
Really?
Yes.
Holy moly. Okay.
Sorry about that. I'm the one who was supposed to be reminding
You're
you.
supposed to remind me. Okay.
I was blinking my eyes rapidly.
Okay. Can I continue?
Yeah, please.
In another case, we had the case of the Damien Clearmont, a 21-year-old that was executed by Free Syrian Army rebels, that we are supplying arms to them. We have been, the West have been supplying arms to them in the city of Aleppo in January of 2014.
So this was a young guy who went from Canada to Syria
Yes.
to join the Free Syrian Army.
Damien was a young man with mental illness. He was diagnosed as being bipolar. He quit school. He dropped out of school, and he was in bad shape, depressed. He became a Muslim when he was 18, and his mother said that Christine Boudreau, his mother said that I felt that I got my son back. He was behaving very well after he became Muslim, and he was socializing, and I thought I got my son back. But suddenly he moved from that part of town to another part and go to another mosque. And suddenly he changed. He becomes secretive again. And And in November of 2012, he went to his mom and said he is going to go to Cairo, Egypt, to learn Arabic. And that wasn't suspicious things for his mother. People go to learn Arabic in Arab country, and she's a French background, so she's much more contact with these things. He went to, so he left in November of 2012, and in January of 2013, CSIS go to Christine Boudreau, his mother, and telling them that your son is not in Egypt, he is in Syria. And we have been surveilling him. He was under our surveillance for about 2 years. So the mother is saying, why didn't tell me any sooner? Why didn't you come and tell me? You were surveilling him, you saw who is radicalizing him. Why are you not telling us? And she blames CSIS. She has 2 programs. One is called Hayat Canada Family Support, that she worked with the woman Danielle Kohler of Germany to stop radicalization of the youth. And another program, Mother for Life, here in Canada. And guess what? Neither RCMP nor CSIS nor government help at all funding any of these programs. Why? If you are for de-radicalizing people, who better can influence the families than a mother that went through it? So they are not doing this. Another case that I'd like to talk about is the case that came out to light in late February 25th. The CBC reporter Natalie Clancy wrote an article on CBC website. ISIS recruited Canadian woman to join fighting Syria.
Okay, so once again, this was the headline in CBC.
CBC, ISIS recruited Canadian woman to join fight in Syria.
Okay.
So what the article called the woman Aisha and her sister Rabia. Her sister is telling the CBC reporter that the sister that went to Syria dropped out of a school and wanted to learn Quran online. There was this woman in Edmonton teaching her Quran, and we believe she radicalized her. We didn't know what's happening, the sister here is saying, and we know that before she left Canada, one day we saw her, she's gone. She went to Edmonton, fly to Edmonton, then from Edmonton to Toronto, to Spain, Barcelona, Spain, and to Turkey. And she said that we believe that this woman in Edmonton provided her with the funding to travel. So the question is this: why the CSIS? And CSIS told the family that their daughter was under surveillance by CSIS for another 2 years, for 2 years before.
Is everybody under surveillance?
Everybody's
by
under
CSIS?
surveillance. So the question is why they didn't tell. Why they didn't tell the family their daughter is in danger. And the most important question is that why now that they know the woman in Edmonton was the radicalizer, why is she not being arrested? In fact, she went to a mosque in Edmonton and were kicked out of the mosque, this woman, because she was trying to recruit people.
Okay. So, I mean, it sounds like you're saying, and I wouldn't disagree with you, that the government of Canada is behind.
They are somehow involved, and they are not answering any question, and the question even is not being raised by our politician
or
and the opposition.
So what are the questions?
The question is, what do they know? We like to see the files for Damien Clearmont and Aisha and other so-called radicalized people that left. Because when Damien Clearmont was so-called radicalized, he was with few other people, like Farah Sheridan, like Salman Ashrafi, like Gordon Brothers. All of them went to Syria. And meanwhile, the CSIS was surveilling the whole thing. So why didn't they stop? The last issue that I want to talk about, the case I want to talk about, is the issue that came out in March 12, 13 here in Canada, hit the news, and then suddenly stopped. You know, we haven't heard anything from it. On February 28th, the authorities in Turkey arrested a man that were helping 3 teenage British girls to go to Syria, you know. And these British girls were about 15, 2 of them 15-year-old, and 1 of them 16-year-old.
It was a huge story, worldwide story.
It was a huge story. And the Europeans were blaming Turkey's government for not stopping this process through their country. You know, they were transferring these kids through their country. So on February 28th, suddenly Turkish government arrested a man, and this man was said under interrogation that he was working for the CISES, and he said that he was a dentist from Syria. He went to Canadian embassy in Jordan to get asylum. The Canadian brought him to Canada for a short period of time and taught him things about what they want him to do, and they promised him citizenship. So they sent him back, and he was arrested with their cell phone and computer that Canadian authority provided him. In his computer, there is evidence that he was getting money from a Western Union account that were giving him between $800 and $1,500 many times. It showed in his passport that he left Turkey to go to Amman, Jordan for many times to give information to Canadian authorities.
So the allegation is that the Canadian government was paying a CSIS agent who smuggled these girls from London to Turkey.
Take these children, because they are 2 15 and 1 16.
And then link them up with ISIS.
So is this child trafficking? Is this sexual abuse of children? Because these children are going to a war area and being among a bunch of killers. For what? And also, there was in another article that came out at that time from French news agency, that they had evidence. They said the Turkish government, Turkish media have printed evidence that he was getting money from the Western country and transferring them through the jewelers in this southern city of Turkey, sending the money to Raqqa in Syria and giving it to ISIS. They were financing. Why? We have this question. The opposition and politicians are not asking.
And where's the media? Why doesn't the media tell this story?
The media, all my information come from media.
Yeah.
But these issues were not discussed in the news.
Exactly.
And the people don't have time to go and read carefully, you know, and do
Mehdi,
research.
we're out of time. Thank you so much. The issue is of fundamental importance, folks. I don't know what we can do about it. Thank you, Mehdi, and thanks for watching Citizens Forum.
So welcome back. Today we have with us Norm Ryder. Norm and I have known each other for quite a few years now. We've worked on issues around public exposure to electromagnetic radiation, such as that emitted from Wi-Fi networks and cellular telephones and such. And Norm has spent a lot of time researching government regulations and also following carefully any changes that have been happening over the last few years. So basically in Canada, electromagnetic radiation is governed by the federal government and through Health Canada and through Industry Canada. So Industry Canada has now looked at their guidelines for public exposure, and there's been some changes. So I've asked Norm to come in today, and let's talk about what these changes are and look at what the ramifications might be for the public. So welcome, Norm. Great to have you here again.
Thank you.
And I see you've come with all your literature. So basically, I think I've explained Safety Code 6 as best I could. But maybe you should start there also, maybe expand a little bit about what Safety Code 6 is and what these revisions have that Health Canada has made.
Well, Safety Code 6 is a code of allowable limits of radiation for federal government workers or people at federal government sites, for example, it doesn't cover us here. Also has some very strange things that it looks just at the effect of the thermal effects of radiation, which falls far short of where the problems are.
So Norm, I know this, that Safety Code 6 does not cover the general public. Now, how is that? I mean, why are these regulations just used for federal employees?
Because the code is designed just for federal government situations, and the provincial government and the municipal governments are falling down in providing any protection. WorkSafe BC does cover a little bit. It covers workers, but that really creates a strange scenario that you have the teachers in a classroom covered by the radiation, but it's okay, you can zap the kids with as much radiation as you want. Mind you, the teachers aren't protected that well because Safety Code 6 is so inadequate in so many ways.
Now, what is, you know, we know that these are guidelines, so therefore they're not like strict regulations, but what are these guidelines based upon, and what's their measurement of harm and safety?
If it can raise the body temperature or part of the body by 1 degree Celsius in 6 minutes, then they declare that harmful. Now, when you think about it, when you're working, when you're exercising in hot water, your body raises by 1 degree Celsius. The temperature rise really has nothing to do with it. There's something else going on other than just a temperature rise. But they're basing it on that is what causes the problem.
So I know, I mean, that always leads us to the issues around harm. And so what is the difference between what their model of harm is, which is some kind of thermal model, and what is the differences between that and, say, what's happening on the ground when people are being harmed by the radiation?
Well, where the standard should be is probably about 300 times more protective, just to make that they have found things like blood clumps at much lower levels than what Safety Code 6 does. That Safety Code 6 is probably one of the least protective codes in the world that you can find. Even the City of Toronto has a standard that is roughly 100 times more protective than we are covered in BC. India, Russia, China, I mean, over half the world's population is protected by standards 100 times more protective than what we have here.
So do you think those regulations are taking into account not only the thermal effects that we mentioned, but these biological effects that seem to occur exposure levels that are much, much less intense than what it actually takes to heat the tissue?
Well, those standards are based on what they call protective standards, that they don't find a lot of problems at lower levels, although they do definitely find at much lower levels of radiation can cause biological harm or reactions in people.
So now the Health Canada has changed tweaked these regulations a bit. What's happened there?
They've made actually a major change that's still far from adequate. They have lowered the allowable limits for the areas frequencies were most affected by from 1/3 to 2/3. Apparently that is so it would be more protective for children and pregnant women, but they're also telling us the radiation doesn't cause a harm, so what's more protective if there's no harm? But that's basically what they've done, is they've lowered those standards quite a bit, still far from adequate, but a major
So they
improvement.
seem to be taking into account some of these biological effects, even though they're not officially saying that.
They're not admitting it. It's obvious they're starting to realize there is a problem there.
So, okay, do you think, like projecting ahead now, do you think that Health Canada's now opening up that door a little bit now, or do you think it's just a one-time kind of sort of concession?
I think there's people are beginning to realize that around now there is a parliamentary committee, health committee studying Safety Code 6. Now, what changes they will come up with and what they'll recommend, I don't know, but they, for the most part, seem to realize that a serious revision of the code is required.
So yeah, perhaps maybe those legislators meeting and what's the name of that committee?
It's the Parliamentary Health Committee. It's the MPs in Ottawa are discussing it.
So I mean, maybe that's the catalyst that's kind of getting Health Canada moving a bit.
It is starting to move. There's still a long ways. So one of my big issues that hasn't been addressed much is what they call near and intermediate field radiation. It can actually extend out quite a ways from a large antenna for some frequencies up to, about 74 feet actually.
Yeah.
And they can't model that area, that there can be very high spikes of radiation in that area that can cause major harm. That Safety Code 6 just doesn't recognize that issue at all.
Because they're basing their guidelines on what we know as far field exposure, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, far field that's where that inverse square law comes into effect, and there's a number of other ones that we all know. But in closer, that's a totally different discussion.
It's very interesting that it's that large an area.
Well, that's one of the worst case scenarios, but it actually could be twice that quite easily.
If you lived in an apartment building and you had an array of antennas above you, you might be getting a very intense exposure. So I think that's something that Health Canada has to take more seriously.
The only way to check that is to actually send somebody in with a meter and test it. You can't calculate it and guess it.
Yeah, so like I know we want to kind of keep this file going, and that's why I brought you in today, because when we have things that are happening, I think the public should become aware that there are people meeting, and there are members of Parliament that are concerned about this issue, and that they're working on our behalf. There are some people that are actually doing something good. So thank you so much for coming in, Norman. We're going to have you back again for sure.
Okay.
So stay tuned, folks, for our final segment of Citizens Forum.
Welcome to the last segment of Citizens Forum, being filmed on Tuesday, May the 5th in the Memorial Arena in Victoria, BC. I'd like to thank again the volunteer crew and the Shaw staff that makes this happen. We're going to be focusing on sewage treatment in this segment, and we want to do that for the next few weeks because it looks like we're kind of at the beginning or in the middle of a process in the CRD that is going to be making major decisions about the issue of sewage treatment. Now, I think what we all want is to have the best possible sewage treatment program in place at the least possible cost. I think that's what most people would want. We're just going to keep our eyes on the process as we move along and try to actually figure out what the process is, because that isn't really that easy either. And one important thing is timelines, and there are suggestions that major decisions are going to be made by the end of June. So now, we're getting close to a third of the way through May. But we don't know for sure that major decisions are going to be made by the end of June because there's different information, and we're trying to figure it out. And so we just want to keep people in touch as best we can with what's going on.
Yeah, and I just wrote a couple of notes, like last few minutes, kind of looking at what citizens should be concerned about. What are our options? What are all the options outside of the CRD box? CRD is a very narrow set of parameters, and They want to build one sewage treatment plant. If they can get away with it, maybe they'll have to build two. But they're still building these huge centralized systems with very dubious data, and they're not stepping back and saying, okay, let's get a real independent analysis of the situation, real and independent
So
scientific.
you don't think that's happening?
No, I've not seen one single report, other than them paying for consultants' reports to come back with the advice that they want to hear. There's been some studies done, but there's also been studies done showing that that the system we have right now isn't that bad.
Okay, and that's important because we should keep in mind that there may be certainly no rush, even though a lot of people say let's get something done. The ocean treatment plan that's in place now, especially if we had more source control, just because of our unique situation, it's
Yeah.
not like we're on a river, may work very well.
So when you have that issue, that we can't just forget the fact that we're trying to make a decision with the proper data. It's a huge elephant in the room for them. They've got new faces involved, but they're still trying to solve the problems with the same old mindset, is what it looks like to me. I'll just read a couple of other things that I think we should have. Proper public notification of meetings. Like they should put large ads in the papers in the same place in the paper every day, talking about ongoing events, and also notifying the public when the next meetings are going to be held. We have to try to work through getting direct involvement with our counselors and not through public relations people. Like that last workshop was very frustrating because we had PR people taking notes and they never reported anything that anybody said hardly. We have to get back to square one. We can't leave off the table any issues that the CRD might wish to leave off. We need more citizens involved. We have to find out where they're talking about. They're not even telling us what they're considering about these new sewage treatment plant sites. We have to get this out of them. And we have to really find, for real, what the deadlines are. Like, we have to consult with the federal government. It seems to me that they're saying that we have a big deadline, but it doesn't appear to be true. And, basically, they're not engaging with the public. It looks good. These public meetings sort of look good, but it's all tailored towards deflecting criticism, ignoring the real central issues, and they're basically just trying to ram another plan down our throats, as far as I can tell.
Now, regarding the timing of the meetings, I didn't know about the last one, which I think was the first one. That was on Wednesday, April the 29th. You mentioned it to me last week, so we went. And it was an interesting thing. Now, the next meetings are actually this weekend, as we're speaking here, which is May the 5th. On Saturday, May the 9th, from 11 to 2, there was a meeting at Cedar Hill Rec Center. And then later that evening, from 3:30 to 5:30, there was a meeting at the Windsor Pavilion in Oak Bay. And on Wednesday, May the 13th, it says from 10 to noon at the Crystal Pool. Now, Wednesday, May the 13th, from 10 to noon, seems like a bizarre time to be having an important public meeting, because who can go? I mean, a lot of people can't go.
If they watch our show Saturday morning, they still could run out and catch one of these events.
Yeah, that's possible. But most of the next set of meetings have already taken place as you're watching this. The third set of meetings will be May the 30th and 31st, and then something in June. So, I mean, there are several public meetings, but it seems that there's, like, I've gone to the website that's mentioned here, tried to get information just about what the issues are, what's being decided, what are we doing. It's not exactly an open fountain of information. It's hard to get in.
Oh, exactly. And I don't think that's by accident. I think they have an agenda. They want to look like they're consulting with the public, and they're going to go through this public relations exercise. But we can still get involved. The public can fight their way into this process. They have to fight their way in. It's not going to happen all by itself. We have to go on record that there's huge problems with their designs and their plans. We have to get this on record, and right now we're not getting that on record. They're going to ignore us and pretend us everything is fine. And I think that's just not fair.
We've got a minute left, so we're going to be trying to cover the issue of sewage treatment a fair bit over the next few weeks. We have a little news service website called thebridgenewsservice.com, thebridgenewsservice.com. And if you go there, we're going to try and set up a button where you can get some information about what's going on. We'll do our best. And if anybody wants to send me an email, my email address appears at the bottom of the screen. We'll try to answer any questions, and we're trying to form a little group that can just make sure that there's a fair, honest, and democratic process so people get what we want, which is a good system at a low cost.
Could I suggest that they contact you, Jack, if anybody wants to get involved?
Yep. And we're out of time. Thank you, Walter.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for watching Citizens Forum.